Hello, welcome to Hank's Maker Mentor. Today we're going over how to use the Cricut Joy Infusible Ink Transfer Sheets. So first we're going to start with opening up the box. So Infusible Ink Transfer Sheets come taped here at the top. I found that an X-Acto knife is the easiest way to get them open. And then you'll just go ahead, open it up. You've got 4 layers to open. And then when you've got a little piece to keep it from sliding. And then you'll have this black bag. I also use my X-Acto knife for this. You could definitely use scissors, whatever works best. You do want to make sure you keep this black bag though, so don't get rid of it. It'll tell you that before you begin, you follow the instructions at help.cricut.com, and it'll give a moisture absorbing pack and a little practice piece of the polyester. So this is similar to the fabric of the shirts, and it's a nice way to test to make sure that it's going to work properly. The other things you'll have are butcher paper. The Cricut Joy has a whole bunch. You will want to make sure you keep them for application. And then for the solid colors, you get 2 sheets of 4.5 by 12. And these are both the same color because this particular package just has the 2 sheets of the blue. You will notice there is a huge difference between these colors. As weird as it sounds, this will transfer and match this color. So don't panic thinking they gave you the wrong color just because it looks very different out here. On that little card it said, make sure you go to help.cricut.com first. I want to just show you what's there in case you need to reference it. So it'll just pull up this for default, and then you can select what you need. So I'm going to just go to Infusible Ink, and it'll come up with how-tos, troubleshooting, frequently asked questions, and accessories. You can do troubleshooting, including unwanted transfer effects and how to avoid them, and then the frequently asked questions. So it has the safety and warnings, general questions, supplies, prep, application, and care. It also goes and talks about the freehand markers. So in how to, you can click on it, get more. I'm going to put this on one of the shirts. I'm going to come here to how to use Infusible Ink Transfer Sheets with Cricut Apparel Blanks. And then it'll go through and it'll tell me what I need. So that'll be a machine, design space, the heat transfer guide, which we'll talk about later, a standard grip mat, an EasyPress. You can also use a heat press, an EasyPress mat, the Cricut Apparel Blank. So I'm using one of the shirts, the transfer sheets, the butcher paper, 80-pound white cardstock, a lint roller, scissors, and tweezers. Let's take a look at the design and go through the settings to get it ready to cut. So I've already done the design, and if you look at the size, it's 9 inches by 3.79, so it will fit on the Infusible Ink sheet at the 4.5 by 12. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click Make It, and for the Cricut Joy, it's going to ask me my load type. So this is how I'm going to put the materials through the machine. Is it going to be without a mat for the smart materials, on a mat for any material? You can also do on the card mat or multiple ways, but those don't apply in this one. So for Infusible Ink, I do want to click on mat. And with Infusible Ink, you do want to make sure you mirror it. So I'm going to do that right away just to make sure I don't forget. And then just because I do have some extra space that's just not going to be able to be used anyway, I'm just going to kind of center it up just to make sure that I don't cut off details on the top or the bottom. So then I'm going to go ahead and click Continue and select my Joy. The Joy only does connect through Bluetooth, so you want to make sure that if you're looking into the Joy that you do have a Bluetooth compatible machine. So the Cricut saves your favorites based off of your machine. I haven't saved Infusible Ink as a favorite on my Joy before, so I'm going to go ahead and click All Materials. And then I'm going to type in Infusible Ink Transfer Sheet, favorite it, and select it. I'm going to leave it at default pressure. And for this one, I do need the 4.5 by 12 mat. So I'm going to take it off. This is the first time I've used the mat, so I haven't put my marker on to show which side I'm going to keep up. Making sure your hands are clean and dry, you're going to want to line it up on your mat. And I'm actually going to put my cover sheet back on over it to just kind of press it down so I'm not rubbing my hands all over the sheet, but I also make sure it gets really firm, even pressure. It's ready for me to load the tools and the material. So I have my fine point blade, that's the one it comes with. I'm going to slide it this way just to make sure I've got plenty of room behind, and then go ahead and run it in. On the Cricut Joy, it automatically pulls it in and checks to make sure it's good. And then once it's ready, it's happy with how you have it aligned, on your screen, it'll ask you to press go since there are no buttons on the machine itself. All right, so it's done cutting and it shows up on my screen to unload my material. I do have the option if I want to try cutting it again. So I'm going to go ahead and click unload and take that out. So our next step is getting it off the mat. So I'm going to flip it over and pull the mat away from the material. I found that on Infusible Ink, in some places it cuts through beautifully, and then others on the same design and everything, it does cut too deep. So you want to be careful about that. It's fine as long as it stays together. So it's just mostly something to be aware of. Don't, pop your finger through and rip it. So for this next step, I'm going to use scissors, tweezers, and my hands. So I'm going to start by taking the scissors and cutting the big sections out of the design. Depending on your design, depends on if you need to do this or how much you need to do this. I just find it's easier to weed when I've taken out as much of the excess as possible. And I'm also going to use these scraps for an experiment. Infusible ink, you won't use like a weeding tool, or I normally use a pin pen to weed your design. So what you'll do is you'll roll it kind of with your fingers. You'll, make sure you run it all the directions to kind of loosen it up from the backing. If you skip this step, it is much, much harder to weed. So don't be like, oh, I don't actually need to do that. So then I'm going to start weeding it. So I just popped it to get a section up. I'm going to pull away the parts of the material I don't want. The easiest way I found to do the settings is to actually follow Cricut's instructions. I go to the Cricut Heat Guide, which I always just find by Googling Cricut Heat Guide. Then you select which EasyPress you're working with to get the right one. So I'm using the EasyPress 2. I am using the Infusible Ink Transfer Sheet. It'll then automatically only give me the blanks that work with it. So I'm going to do the t-shirt and click apply. So it's gonna give me the steps. So I need my EasyPress at 385. So you'll see here that it shows me the stacking order. So I've got my basic stuff set up. I am using the Cricut unisex t-shirt blank. All the Infusible Ink compatible blanks will have this compatible with Infusible Ink system sticker on it. So make sure you keep an eye out for that, or for something with a very high polyester count or that's labeled for sublimation. So I have my EasyPress mat, I have my shirt. Inside my shirt, I have a piece of white cardstock. You don't want colored cardstock. And then I'm going to lint roll my design. You want to make sure, even if it looks clean and everything looks fine, you want to make sure you lint roll, because there will be some small stuff that can negatively impact your design. So then you need a sheet of butcher paper that is larger than the plate of your EasyPress. So this one is a sheet from a previous Infusible Ink project that didn't get anything on it, so I do reuse it, contrary to Cricut's advice. I have it set at the 385 for 40 seconds. So to preheat it for the 15, I just wait till it gets down to 25. And then I take my butcher paper off. So it's time to place my design. So I'm going to use this to help line everything up. It's a little bit harder for me to do center, because center and straight lines are not my strong suit. So I've got that there. And then I'm going to take my design, and I'm actually going to give it a second to cool before I actually put this on. Otherwise, I have run into ghosting before, because I've set it down while it's still pretty hot and then moved it. The Infusible Ink itself is not sticky. The backing is, the liner is. It's not incredibly sticky, so depending on how much you have left and the different conditions you're working with, you may need some of the heat-resistant tape. And that is special tape that can handle the temperatures of the EasyPress. You don't want to just use regular tape. We're gonna say it's good enough. So then I took my guide off, and my next step is to cover it with the butcher paper again. That one is staying nicely, so I'm not gonna use the heat resistant tape this time. So I put my butcher paper back on, and then it is time to put the EasyPress on. So I'm going to bring it and set it down. I'm going to use light pressure, which for me is just kind of a one hand on it. You'll notice when I placed it, I made sure to avoid the seams on the shirt. You also want to avoid any seams on the collars or anything. That'll give you uneven pressure and mess up your design. So then you slowly lift it up. You want to lift it up as straight as you can. I'm going to turn off my EasyPress. Then I'm going to remove the butcher paper. And then right now this is still really hot, so you want to be careful. You do want to remove it while it's warm. All right, so you don't want to use your fingers to lift this. So I'm just using my tweezers. Even if your hands are really good with heat, the pressure of your fingers can mess up your design. So we've got it all the way off. If anything didn't come up with just lightly grabbing the edge of it, you do want to make sure you use the tweezers. You'll see that what used to have the blue on it and look like this now has had all the blue taken off of it, and it's now in the shirt. I'm going to throw that away. I'm going to pull out my cardstock. So I didn't get any ink on the cardstock. Sometimes I do. When that happens, I do just throw out that piece of cardstock. This one I am going to reuse because I try not to be super wasteful. Same thing with the butcher paper. It still looks good, so it's gonna go with my infusible ink supplies. So one of the awesome things about infusible ink is this is ready to go right now. It doesn't need to cool so it doesn't smear. It's just ready. It's still warm, but it's not gonna smear. It's totally soft. It's in there with the fabric, and I am super excited. For like washing and care instructions, you'll wash it inside out, cool water, mild detergent. You can tumble dry it low or line dry it. You don't want to use any fabric softener, dryer sheets, or bleach. We're going to do the sample swatch in hindsight so I can compare this blue on the white versus on the gray. So I'm going to do the same steps though. I'm going to lint roll it. Put the butcher paper on and preheat for the 15 seconds. Press the Cricut button to stop the timer and then lift this away. Alright, so we're running a couple of different tests. I took out part of it so I can lift the liner. I have the heat resistant tape on the back that will be covering part of the ink to see how that affects it. And then also having the color removed, but the paper still remaining to see how important it is to get just this liner direct. And you'll see partway through, it takes away the green because it's transferring so much heat to the project. It's no longer quite at the 385, which is okay. It doesn't need to be. When they've done the timing and stuff, they have it set up for what the EasyPress is going to do. This is one of the reasons you put the cardstock underneath. I had it off just a little bit and it did get blue on my cardstock, which fortunately is not on my mat itself. I'm excited to see that where the paper was just still there, there's maybe ever so slightly a difference, but not much if there is actually compared to where just the liner was. I don't think there is any difference. So I'm excited about that because I've had projects where I fought really hard to get all the paper off, even though I'd already gotten the color layer off. And same thing, it's nice and strong in there. So let's remove the supplies so we can do a side-by-side comparison. We have our shirt, our box. Trying to make sure you get it in the best lighting to see the matching. And then you've got it there. It is a little bit darker on the gray, which is to be understandable. The infusible ink goes and binds into the fabric, so your fabric still shows through to a certain degree. But I think it is really awesome. I'm excited because I prefer gray over white, so I'm excited to do some more of the infusible ink shirts using gray instead of white. I hope it was helpful to see the infusible ink process with the Joy, but it does apply to the other machines as well. If you want more detailed explanation about infusible ink, go ahead and check out my infusible ink series that I am linking below in the comments. Thanks for watching, and until next time, bye.